Hello. Yeah, I would like to take a few minutes just to demonstrate how to use Excel to find the net present value, the internal rate of return, and the modified internal rate of return. So let's assume you've been given a project that requires $100 initial investment, and then at the end of year one, it provides a cash inflow of $10. You have another $60 in the second year inflow, and then you have another cash flow at the end of the third year, which is $80. And let's also assume that the weighted average cost of capital is 10%, which is same thing, cost of capital. So how do we go about in using Excel to determine the net present value? Now, keeping in mind the way Excel works is this. So there are two ways we can approach this problem to determine the net present value, which is again is a net of all present values. So our cash flows are minus 100, which is the cash outflow at the beginning of the project, but then we have positive inflows that follows. So we can determine the present value of each of the cash flow and then just sum them together, and that will give us our net present value. So if we choose that route, then just keep in mind that we have $100 to invest today at time zero, and therefore the present value of a cash outflow of 100 is the same value, which is minus 100. So the present value of 100 is $100. How about the present value of $10 to be received one year away? The present value of these $10, so the present value of these $10 will be, again, we find the present value of the $10. Remember, our cost of capital is 10%, and this $10 is to be received one year away, and therefore your N is 1. The payment is 0, and the future value, which is what you'll be receiving one year away, you'll be receiving $10, and therefore uh, the future value is 10. And again, we assume these payments are at the end of the period, and if we find that the present value of $10 is $9.09. We do the same thing, the $60 to be received 2 years away, and therefore the present value of this will be, again, our cost of capital is 10. This is to be received 2 years away, so our N is 2, and payment is 0, and our future value again is the $60. So that's our future value, and again we assume these payments are at the end of the period. Present value of 60 in today's value is $49.59. We also find the present value of the $80 to be received 3 years away, and therefore the present value of this is, again, cost of capital is 10. The $80 is to be received 3 years away, and therefore N is 3. Payment is 0. The future value is 80, and the again we assume these payments are at the end of the period, and the present value of $80 is $60.11. So to find the net present value, we just basically summing up all our present values. So we simply add in all these present values. And if you add all the present values, we find that the net present value is $18.78. So this is just one way to approach this problem. Another way to do it is you can use the two-step process where we know that the way your Excel works, or the way it computes the net present value, uh, i- if you just select all the values, then it's going to assume that is part of the computation. So the other approach to to work through this is this. So first of all is to find a net present value of just the inflows, the 10, the 60, the 80, and we combine them together as one value. Remember, if I have to find the net present value of 10, 60, 80 is what I have here. The 9, the 49, and the 60. So if I sum this together, let me just show you this. So if I sum the positive, just the outflows, the inflows, sorry, if I just sum these three values together, it gives me a value of 118.78 cents. So what you'll do in it, what you're going to do here is you will find the present value of all three, which is simply saying to find the present value of the three values is my NPV. If I'm going to use the NPV function instead of using the present value function, then I can do the NPV, but I have to find the NPV first for the inflows first, not the initial outflow. So the present value of the three values, again, remember here, it's our cost of capital is 10. And then our values, we are trying to find the net present value of these inflows, the 10, the 60, the 80. I can highlight those values. I can enter, and this will give me the net present value, which is the same thing I just showed you here. The net present value is 118.78, but this is where I'm doing this in a one-step process. So instead of me finding the net present value, the present value of each of the initial each of the inflow, what I do is I do this as a one-step process. And then to find the net present value, what you'll do, you will take your initial outflow, which is the $100, and you'll add this to your net present value that you have here, which is that's cell E3, right? So this is an E3, and this will give you the same. I think I might have made a mistake. Hold on. It should be that value. It should be 18. So let me see what I did. So what I'm trying to do is simply this. I'm just trying to take this value and add this value to minus 100. And you can see clearly then that your net present value is 1878, and it's the same thing if you took the long way to get there. So this is a long way of trying to find the net present value. The shortcut is, first of all, is to find the net present value of the inflows, and then add that value to the initial outflow, and that will give you the net present value. So just be careful. If you're going to use the second route, you're only finding the net present value of the initial of the inflows, year one, year two, year three, and then add it to your initial outflow, or initial investment, and that will give you the net present value. The other approach or the other issue we need to address is how to use Excel to determine the internal rate of return. Now, with the internal rate of return is a simple process. Again, you can go to function, formulas, financial formulas, and bring up the internal rate of return formula, or simply, again, I just do equal to IRR and open up the parentheses, and again you could see you have a guidance here. I need to select my values, and the values I'm looking at, I have my cash flows, which is 10, 100, 10, 60, and 80. I highlight all my cash flows and then close the parentheses and enter. That way then Excel can determine what the internal rate of return is. And again, you could see in this example, the internal rate of return is 18%. Right? Again, it's a very simple process. So what uh, I'm simply doing this in one-step process. Highlight my cash flows and enter, and it gives me my internal rate of return. As for the modified internal rate of return, again, I'll use the equal to MIRR, open up the parentheses, use the guidance. I need to enter my values, then the financing rate and reinvestment rate. And as we know, the financing rate and reinvestment rate is the same thing as the cost of capital. So we assume that under the modified internal rate of return, the investment and the reinvestment rate is the same thing as the weighted average cost of capital. And therefore, my values again, it's 100, 10, 60, and 80. I highlight all of my values, but then I have to enter my investment rate, which again I can just select. It is 10%, select that to be 10%, and the reinvestment rate again is also 10%, or just enter a 0.1, so it's still same thing, right? Do that, enter the value, and it gives me my modified internal rate of return is 16%. Now, if you want to be more accurate, then you can always make sure that this is up to 2 decimal places. Therefore, to 2 decimal places, I can make sure that if this was the case, then my modified internal rate of return is 16.5%. Okay. Again, simply again, this is just a quick way of trying to figure out or find the NPV or IRR or MIRR using Excel. If you opt not to use a calculator, you're still going to be accurate in those computations.